Robert Garven of Cirith Ungol. Welcome to 69 Faces of Rock. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I hope you don't mind. I brought along a little friend here, Cthulhu. He's like one of my elder god buddies, kind of.
Keep him present. As long as he's going to contribute to well-being, why not? Um,
Yeah.
First of all, congratulations on this new album. It is fantastic. When did you start working on this album?
That's kind of like a long story, but what happened was when our last album came out, Forever Black up here,
Mhm.
oh, it came out right as soon as the pandemic hit, right?
Yes.
And so we were like, wow, how did this happen? How did we, our first album since we got back together hits right as a giant worldwide pandemic hits and kind of freaked us out. But then we realized the whole album's, at least part of it's like very dark and doomy. So we thought, well, that's kind of ironic that it actually, our music fits the time, the sign of the times kind of. What we didn't want to do is during the pandemic, because it drug on, is put out another full length album. So we put out this album right here, Half Past Human,
Mhm.
uh, which was a bunch of our older songs that people have been asking us to maybe re-release, re-record, and we kept saying no, we don't want to do that. We only want to put out new material. But then we thought, hey, maybe this might be the perfect time to dig out some old songs, and we kind of had some fun with that. And I think they actually came out really good.
Mhm.
Some people still don't realize they were old songs, and then some people keep thinking that all our new albums are old songs that we're re-recording, which isn't true either. So that's kind of where the story was on Half Past Human.
Mhm.
And so all along behind that, we were writing the new material, which would end up being Dark Parade, which came out October 20th.
Mhm. Did you make any changes to the way you approach the writing and recording process?
I don't think so. Someone asked me that earlier. To me, I'm kind of using the same template and the same recipe we did going back all the way back to King of the Dead, which is right above me, right up here. And the joke is, we kind of have a secret recipe the way we build our songs. And if we gave out that secret recipe, there'd be thousands of Cirith Ungol bands sprouting up all over the world because they'd have our recipe.
I know, right?
But yeah, no, I think we've been doing them the same way. Uh, I think the irony is when the band got back together and we put out some music and then people heard it, the first thing they said was, wow, this still sounds like Cirith Ungol. And I think as long as Tim's singing and with my very weird, my drumming style is like, you know, I know other drummers don't even consider me a drummer because my style is so foreign to what most people do playing drums. I think we're always going to kind of sound like that thing.
Mhm.
And I think building the songs, we use the same building blocks that we did on those other albums, and I think it's a winning formula.
Kind of a recipe question, which I already had prepared. What does it take for a song to become a Cirith Ungol song?
Uh, well, it has to have Tim singing. That's undeniably. Matter of fact, that's the thing. Everyone in the band's replaceable except for Tim. When we first got back together, Greg once sent me a message. He goes, "We're now all of his trained monkeys, or like dancing monkeys," and it was like kind of like a joke thing. But I mean, it's Tim is. It'd be like if you took Elvis out of Elvis's band, kind of. I guess so.
I
And
have
I'm not saying all the rest of us don't have input and style and viability for being in the band. I'm just saying Tim is that one unique thing that kind of is the glue that holds the band together.
usually each album is like a new opportunity. What are your hopes for this new album?
Well, I I personally I always tell this story. If every other guy in the band was sitting here and you ask them all these same questions, you get a different answer. But because all of them's time schedules and things for them to do, I'm usually the one that gets you're lucky enough to get to actually interview me. But I see Dark Parade as part two of Forever Black.
Mhm.
And I see Forever Black as, the album when we got back together, this is our statement. And both of those albums actually carry on something that went back to Paradise Lost. Side two on all three of the last studio albums that we've made, the last three, it's a very dark and gloomy, pessimistic kind of like end of the world view. Uh, and most of that's driven by Tim's, doomy lyrics and his view of the kind of like the fall of mankind. And I see Dark Parade, at least side two of that, is kind of extension of that same feeling that we had. And people have asked, was it darker because of the pandemic? I really don't think so. I think if it would have been, I think if peace would have broke out in the Middle East and, they had a cure for cancer, the Dark Parade would have still came out as dark and ugly as it is, because that's kind of the band right now. The music seems like we're reflecting the world around us.
True. Let's talk about the songs. I listened to the download a few times and I got some first impressions, which you may or may not agree with, but those are interesting always. I'm sure that opinion is going to be transitioning the more I listen to it. Velocity, powerful opener, simple yet complicated. How much thinking went into this song?
Well, you know what? Velocity is similar to, like, people have asked, why is that the only upbeat song on the album? And if you look back at every one of our albums, going back to Frost and Fire, hold behind me here, each album had a song that started off on there. On Forever Black, it was Legions Arise. On Paradise Lost, it was Join the Legion. On One Foot in Hell, it was Blood and Iron, Atom Smasher, and then Frost and Fire on our first album. We have always had like one of those kind of like an upbeat song. And I try to explain it this way, we want to throw something on there to kind of get people's attention, also to kind of be more like full throttle, open throttle, because later on our stuff gets kind of doomy and gloomy, and we don't want people crying right out of the gate, So that's
makes sense. Relentless. What struck me on this one, it has that Richie Blackmore Middle Eastern feel.
Yeah, you know what? We've used some Middle Eastern type kind of signature leads on some of our other songs in the past, and I think that that's something that was kind of like a stylistic thing of the band. The whole song on this, and once again, I'm paraphrasing what Tim said. The relentless, it's, and even though this isn't even side two, and that's, I guess, how depressing this whole album was meant to be. We're already on the second song is like, relentless, we're headed toward this relentless precipice where, we all go over the edge together and there's no stopping it. And what's funny is we were talking about calling the album Relentless, but Tim was really set on Dark Parade. And but every night, whether I'm watching the news or whatever it is, it's relentless. It's like the rain is relentless, the war in the Middle East is relentless, everything's relentless. And so I guess it kind of draws back to that song. I know you're looking for more musical references.
This is really, really good explanation. I like where you're going with this.
But and Tim wrote a little thing when the record company, they ask us for a little questionnaire on each song, and I'm kind of remembering what he said, and that's what his thing was, is, like, this is the relentless march, like, to the end of mankind. Mm-hmm. So
Sailor on the Seas of Fate, to me that appears to be like the centerpiece of the album. Huge epic song.
I love it. And that's a song, once again, everyone in the band would tell you a different story, but here's my story. When I was a child, my parents took me to see Ben-Hur with Charlton Heston, and there's amazing movie, 2 or 3 scenes in that movie. There's a chariot scene, which if anyone hasn't seen that, they need to go watch that, because it's probably the most epic chariot scene in any movie ever imagined. The other scene that always stuck with me is Charlton Heston gets in trouble with the Romans. They imprison him. They put him on a slave ship. He's chained to the oars with all these other guys, and they're rowing in unison to a guy sitting up there in front, banging with giant hammers on like a wooden stump with leather on top of it. Mm-hmm. And when we were working on that song, I was envisioning, I kept telling the guys in the band, okay, this whole song to me is going to be about this Roman slave ship with the pounding of the hammers, and I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but they start off with battle speed. He's go boom, boom, boom. And then it's like ramming speed or attack speed, boom, boom, boom. And then ramming speed, boom, 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 boom. And that always somehow struck me. And matter of fact, Tim, the same thing, we were talking about that. And so my drumming throughout the whole song was based upon that. And I actually went in and overdubbed a little bit of floor toms, playing like I was that guy up in front of the slave galley, beating out the beats for the rowers. And so to me, that song had a lot of, uh, at least from me, a lot of passion and feeling. Matter of fact, I fought with the guys. Uh, we wanted to get like at Ocean Fields. We don't use that many effects in our band in the past, but there's a kind of a creaking at the beginning to sound like an old ship, creaking. And I wanted a seagull, and the guy said, "No seagulls." And I fought with the guys forever, and I got one seagull. And so there's one seagull in there. But to me, that was really important because it kind of set kind of the mood for the whole rest of the song to come.
After that song, Sacrifice seems like a very transitional song, but has a lot of good flavors in it.
Well, Sacrifice, we were trying to come up with a song, I kind of, I was actually kind of daring the guys in the band to help me out with this one. I was writing lyrics for what would be a song about human sacrifice, either a Mayan or an Aztec, like an actual human sacrifice, back in the day. And I wanted to be very realistic. So I was sending out pictures, from the actual Aztec. A lot of that got burnt up by the Spanish conquistadors and stuff, but 2 or 3 of them made it back to Europe. And I think one's in Germany, Dresden Codex or whatever. But anyway, there's some little parts of that stuff. Anyway, showed people getting their hearts cut out and stuff. So I was writing lyrics for that. Tim actually came up with a better set of lyrics, so we went with his. But that was kind of, for me, I wanted the whole feeling of the song to be kind of have a Latin flavor with it. Jimmy'd come up with a long guitar part at the beginning. It was really amazing. And in the studio, he just did some little thing, and we recorded that. And they said, and everyone was saying, "Okay, let's just go with that." And then I actually bought a pair of castanets, and I studied I wanted to play them through the whole song, and that never really happened. But at the beginning, there was like a little castanet thing there. So that kind of that whole song there, at least for me, is kind of exploration of, the kind of like the tragedy of the actual human sacrifice. Now I know Tim's lyrics don't really meet that what I was thinking about, but I mean, at least I think the whole feeling is there for that song.
Mm-hmm. Looking Glass has probably the most beautiful solo on the album.
Yeah, Looking Glass, that's one of my favorite songs on the album, and I wished. We talked about doing a video of that. We had all sorts of ideas for stuff, but it never came to fruition. Some of our songs have like a slower part in the middle of it. Matter of fact, another song, War Eternal, songs that actually slow down in the middle. And that's kind of what we were kind of setting that song on, it kind of like a similar recipe for that. But yeah, no, the guitar solo is amazing. What I liked about it most was that it has a really driving drum beat to it. And I sat there for hours kind of just playing with that drum beat, trying to get something that I thought that would be very, for me, fulfilling. And also there's like a little drum fill right before the center slow part. And I worked on that for a couple of days just to try to get the right feel of it. And I know it's really simple. There's not even that many drum hits on it, but I just wanted the perfect thing that would feel correct on that. And that's another song that I think you nailed it. There's some really good material on here, but I think The Sailors and The Looking Glass are 2 songs to me that stand out of all of them.
Mm-hmm. Moving on, title, Dark Parade. To me, that seems like a battle between the guitar riff and the drums as to who will dominate.
Yeah, that's what's funny. I'll tell you my story about that. Once again, these are all based on my feelings, because to me, I don't consider myself a technical drummer as much as I consider myself almost like a performance artist. There's a H.P. Lovecraft story, Horror at Red Hook. And at the end of the story, there's a underground cavern filled with water, and there's a dock, and a greasy water slurping up against the dock, and marching along this dock is this giant group of monstrosity. You can't even call them humans, because they're kind of like parading monstrosities, and they're all parading up to a guy, a swollen phosphorescent figure sitting on a golden throne. And Tim goes, he goes, I got these lyrics, Dark Parade. And I go, wow, Dark Parade. I go, that reminds me of this H.P. Lovecraft story. He's like, what are you talking about? So, I read the story to him. I played it for him. I have an audio book of it. And they're all like, you're crazy. But to me, every time I played the song, when I'm doing the drums, uh, every time I think of it, I think of this one part out of this H.P. Lovecraft story. Now, like I said, every other guy in the band would probably tell you a different. And Tim's his same thing as the Dark Parade is like mankind's parade, down, back through evolution, down to like our subhuman form, pain and suffering, to the end of time. That's what he would say, something along those lines.
I have to say that I love that all of you have different perception, and intensity of each of that perception brings such a richness to the overall sound.
Yeah, well, it's not, I don't think it's one-sided. You can't say that,
Not at all. And then staying on the topic of Dark Parade, at about 350, there's a great sequence there that kind of gets you completely off the hook.
Yeah, well, you talking about the bluesy part at the end?
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, no, I love that.
The song is over, and then it's like it takes you somewhere else completely.
Yeah, no, that's part of the beauty of that song. You know what I wanted to do too, and we actually recorded. We were in the room jamming it. We had like a 5 or 10 minute thing on the end, which was kind of like a jam band, kind of like a bluesy thing. But because albums can only be 22 minutes on a side, or you start losing quality of the sound, we actually had to chop off some of that at the end. It was maybe 2 or 3 times longer than what it ended up on the album. So that was kind of like a bummer for us.
Mm-hmm.
But then I'm sure you're going to ask about Distant Shadows and Down Below.
I know. Well, Distant Shadows, to me, it has the making of like a silent Cirith Ungol classic.
Yeah, those two songs are actually tied together. If you listen to them on the album, they'll flow from one to the other. And that was kind of the plan. Even though they're two separate, distinct songs, they're kind of like joined together, almost as if co-joined twins, kind of in a way. Yeah, no, I love that. I was doing some really heavy drumming on there and stuff. I haven't shared this with anyone, but I always try to give people something new to work with. When I went to go record the drums for this, there was no one there to help me move my drum set over. And I have like 17 cymbals and like this giant drum set. By the time I got my drum set over there, I went in to record the next day and I couldn't even stand up. So my back was hurt so bad. I played all the drumming on that album probably nowhere near as good as it would have been as if I would have been, mm-hmm. if we were rich and I had roadies carry my drums over, right? But on that song too, I had a bunch of more complicated like drum fills and stuff that kind of I either left out. But what I also was trying to do too is we wanted this kind of a slow, kind of a very dirge like, especially on Distant Shadows, kind of like a very painful, dark feeling in there. And I think at one point it's actually the other guys don't hear it, but I'm actually slowing down like at the very end of the solo, and I'm like, oh, that's horrible. Somewhere we got to fix that. And everyone's like, no, I don't hear that, but I still hear that. When we played the song live for the other night for the first time, I'm trying to do that same kind of just slow down to match the feel of the song. But then when it goes into Down Below, I think it's just a fantastic song. And it kind of reminds me of some of our earlier music, like King of the Dead off the album King of the Dead. I do some heavy drum parts on there, which kind of remind me of a similar part. But I just think, yeah, those two are the fitting end of that. And, when it's over, I feel that, we've actually, at the end of Down Below, there's no one's going to be confused at it's the ending of the album. You know what I'm saying? It's like the final act. It's like if you're watching a Shakespeare thing and everyone was all killed and dead at the end, you're at the end of the play. And so that's how I feel about those two.
No, it's a great closer. How will you support this album? What is the plan?
Well, I don't know if you've heard, but we've yeah, but we've announced that the band next year is going to be the last year playing live, and so we're going to be playing our final live shows next year, and we're hoping everyone will come out and see them. And It's several reasons. We're all getting older, traveling's getting harder and grueling on us more. And I think, when we got back together, we thought we'd be together for maybe a couple of shows, and it ended up being almost 9 years of shows and new music. And I think that, we're ready to step back from playing live, but I'm still hoping that we're going to create some new music. I mean, that's my hopes.
So there will be more music after Dark Parade.
That's my hope.
There's no live shows.
No live shows. And even though every other band, I could go down the list, I don't want to embarrass all the bands, but like 50 other bands have already played their final tour 10 times over. I think this with us is going to be our final year playing live.
Good things never last, as Ronnie James Dio once said.
And we miss him every day, right?
Absolutely. Let's talk some history, right? You have a long history. You formed in what, 1971, but your first album didn't come out until 1981. That's 10 years without a record. How did you manage to stick around for that long?
Well, remember, we were young. We were around 13 years old in 1971. So we were playing local shows, writing material. We had a little recording studio, just similar to what we do today. We had a little studio, and my sister got married and moved out of my parents' house. So we took over her bedroom, put the recording studio in the closet. We practiced there, and we wrote material. And we wanted to put out stuff, but we were trying to get record company notice, and that was near impossible back in the day. We'd send out cassettes, and we'd play shows. And so we decided to put out our first album, Frost and Fire, up here, to try to get the record company some kind of respect from them by saying, hey, look, instead of sending you a cassette, we're going to send you an album that's as good as any other album that's coming out right now, quality wise, recording, printing, artwork, all that kind of stuff. And the record companies, once again, as always, they're out marching on to whatever they're looking for. They're looking for the next band that was successful to the band before them, no matter whatever that was, right? So what we said was, hey, you know what? And actually, to be frank on that too, on this first album, we put all of what we would consider our more accessible music. Back then, there was radio airplay was the king, so we put on there what we thought music that would be that they would play on the radio, thinking that our other stuff is way too heavy and no one would like it. And then some of the local stations played that album and said, wow, this is too heavy. And we think they meant it's too different. So we decided, our next album, we're going to pull out all the stops on King of the Dead, and we're going to put our heaviest music on there. And that's what King of the Dead ended up being. So, yeah.
Right there.
Yeah. And that, to this day, a lot of people still think that's one of our better albums, but I would put our last two albums up against that any day.
A little bit later, you followed with One Foot in Hell.
Yes. Not 2 feet in hell, just 1 foot in hell.
One's enough.
I was watching TV once, and I saw a TV preacher hold that up on TV, which was amazing. I mean, nowadays I could have recorded that, but back then it was on TV, and we had no ability to do that. But yeah, no, that was an amazing album. That was on Metal Blade Records until recently. Everything's been recently, all our stuff's on Metal Blade, but back then that was our only album on Metal Blade Records. But there's some killer stuff on there. We still, to this day, like our show the other night, we played two of the songs off there, Blood and Iron and Chaos Descends, which are just massive songs, and so they're still sticking around.
In 1991, Paradise Lost.
Okay, so we'd actually left Metal Blade and went back to the same record company that put out our first couple of records. And, they weren't a bad group of people, but they, once again, they had something different in mind than what our band kind of was, to be honest. So that album, we lost some members and we got some new members, and then they left in the middle of the recording of that. So that album kind of had, it had kind of a weird flavor to it. And there's 2 or 3 songs on there that really never should have been on there. But we let some of the other band members that were in the band recording with us put some of their songs on there, just because we'd always been kind of conscientious to everyone else, right? And so I think that was the only big mistake on that album. But it, once again, the good stuff on there is as good as anything we ever did.
shortly after the band broke up. How come?
A couple of people left the band. I think some of the people, once again, people are all like, how come we're not famous? We're putting out records and we're not famous. And then also, too, the hair metal thing was going on in LA, and we just found that disgusting. I mean, to us, it was the opposite of everything we saw as real heavy metal. We were even offered by a guy to be our manager if we put on lipstick and put on women's clothing and stuff, and we said no. And the guy went on to work with Guns N' Roses. So, I mean, I think we look back on that. The joke was, I'd be like putting mascara on right now if I knew we would make a chance to make all that kind of money, right? So, we just, Tim and me were the only guys left in the band, and we were sitting there going, what are we going to do? We put out a bunch of great albums, but, the music world is headed in a direction that we don't understand. And so we decided, hey, it's better to fold it up, once again, trying to be like on top instead of like hanging around, trying to get a bunch more guys in the band together. And that's kind of where in 1991, that's where it kind of all fell apart.
And did you guys do anything music-wise during this downtime?
No, I swore that I would never touch another pair of drumsticks as long as I lived because I was so angry at the record companies, kind of the way I felt like we treated. I thought that we had a real chance at one point at the big time, and it never really kind of came through. But we realized over time that's more about luck than it is talent. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind to this day, everything I know, the bands that are big, and you could name off any band, doesn't mean that they aren't good or talented, but most of the big bands were either in the right place at the right time, or they knew someone, or they had money, or they had record company support or something. There's always something back there that.
Yeah, precisely. So what sparked the reunion? Because you came back.
Yeah, Jarvis, our bass player manager, got us back together. We wouldn't even be talking if it wasn't for him. He lives in my hometown, and his band Night Demon traveled over Europe. And he said, there's guys over there that listen to your music still. We see guys in Cirith Ungol t-shirts. You guys should get back together. And we said no. And guys in Europe said, get back together. We said no. And he put on a local festival here named Frost and Fire after our first album. And he had a meet and greet, and we signed autographs for hours. And we kind of realized that there maybe was a group of people that wanted to see the band. So that's why we got back together. And we got back together thinking, hey, we'll only be together for a couple of shows. And it kind of spiraled out of control. And that's kind of where we are now, wrapping up with our statement that next year is going to be our last year, just thinking that we've kind of done everything we wanted to do, especially at least playing live. And we'd rather go out on top of the bang than go out with a whimper.
Yeah. Well, kind of Servants of Chaos, I think that kind of got the ball rolling for you, right?
Well, that was an album that we put that out in 2000, 2001. What that was basically was we had a bunch of old tapes, and the tapes were starting to deteriorate really badly. So our thought was either we get this stuff out now or it's going to be gone forever from history. And so Metal Blade Records in Germany, we talked to them. The gentleman over there at the time, who's since passed away, amazing person. He helped put that out. And once again, that's kind of like some of our old garage type tapes, one of our early demos. And some of the guys in the band they really don't like that because it's some of our more primitive material. But I think there's some really good stuff on that album.
I'm alive now. That was a statement.
Yeah. Back. Yeah, no, that was a live album. We recorded a show in Germany and also a show in Greece. And the show in Greece got picked for that one. And it's amazing. In full circle, we're playing in March. We're playing Back Up the Hammers in Greece where they recorded that. So.
And then you follow that with a studio record.
Yes, Forever Black. You know what? I got to tell you, I have another interview coming I've already jumped over on this one, but if you have any more, let me finish up if there's any more questions. And I apologize for what?
I have one more question after this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
When you look back at all the times that you spent doing music, what would you say kept you going?
I can speak for myself. my love for real heavy metal. I remember seeing my first metal concert. It was Mountain, and it was such an amazing thing to see a heavy metal show live. Uh, the power and the intensity, and it tapped into something primal. Like I think in all of us, that when you see like a metal act play, you know, flashing lights and the sound and everything. Uh, and I just knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I wanted to create heavy metal music. And I remember even when we first met the guys on Rush, we were sitting there talking, and they're talking about what we wanted to do. And I told them, I go, I want to create the heaviest metal music that I can, known to man. And that's been my goal all along. And I can't say we've achieved 100% goal, but that's been the goal. And we've tried. I think every album has improved on it a little bit. And I'm hoping that we have some more music after this to try to even try to climb even higher.
Thank you, Robert, and good luck with the new album.
Hey, thank you so much for talking today about the band. And if we play in Chicago again, will you come see us play?
Definitely.
Hey, you said you're from Europe originally. Where in Europe?
I'm originally from Poland.
I think we're going to be playing in Poland next year too, maybe. So we're very excited. So
Great audience out there. Thank you so
hey,
much.